What's up, dude? Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So if you're new here, hello, my name is Carlee and I cover true crime cases. A lot of the ones that I do, however, are either ones that are currently happening right now at the moment and require, updates later on, or they're just cases that happened years ago, but we still don't really know as much about them, or they're just not as widely talked about in the mainstream kind of true crime community, I guess. Today's case, however, though, it does have a happy ending and it's not a horribly sad, tragic story. Thankfully, nobody dies, but it is a true crime story nonetheless. But I thought that we could just kind of use something that was a little bit happier, maybe a tad bit more uplifting. But with that, let's just jump right into it. One early morning in January 1964, two bread delivery men found a 2-month-old baby boy in a phone booth just outside of Lancaster, Ohio. Nobody knew who he was or where he came from. His birth certificate just lists the place he was found, a telephone booth outside Yilkes Drive-In on US 22. This birth certificate, of course, was made after they sort of figured out what to do with him. He was found wrapped in a blanket in a cardboard box. It's estimated that he was there for between 3 or 4 hours, roughly, before the delivery men saw him move in the phone booth. It was reported that he was cold to the touch, and so was the bottle of milk that was left with him. Dozens and dozens of people inquired about adopting the baby, and just as many people attempted to figure out who he was and who he originally belonged to, for lack of better words. At first, the police believed that he was possibly a kidnapped victim. However, eventually they decided that he was abandoned since there had been no reports of any child abductions. Nobody, including the little boy, found any answers. He was put into foster care and eventually was adopted by his family. His new family moved to Arizona, where the little boy, named Steve now, has lived ever since. Steve knew that he was adopted, but he was a teenager before he heard the phone booth story. Luckily, my parents told me early on that I was adopted, probably from the time I was 3, he said. Most of that really had no impact on me. You hear it so much, it doesn't faze you anymore. He himself was a little skeptical of the story and went to the phone booth in Lancaster to try to find answers. However, he didn't find anything. It wasn't until his own 2 children, 18 and 14 years old, got him to upload his DNA to Ancestry.com to figure out his ethnicity and to maybe find a genetic relative out there somewhere. After a few months, Steve got a genetic match. He learned that this man was his first cousin. He said, "I think I know who your mother is. We've heard throughout our lives that there's a baby that we're related to that was left in the telephone booth," Dennis recalled. Steve, Dennis is his name. It was this hidden secret. The cousin connected him to a half-sister that Steve has who lives in Baltimore, Maryland. The sister had also heard the story of Steve. "This deep, dark secret of my biological mother, the kids had heard about this, but they weren't sure if it's true or not," Steve said. The site had a DNA test done. Not the site. The sister had a DNA test done on her own to make sure that the match was legit. "The mother has finally said she wants to meet with me," Steve said. "Slowly, week by week, she said, I kind of remember." His mother was 18 years old when she got pregnant with Steve, and his father coerced her into giving him up. He claimed that he'd marry her if she did. The pair was traveling through Ohio to Kentucky, where Steve was born in a hospital. On their way back to Maryland, Steve's dad took him and left him in the phone booth. After that, the dad disappeared. So essentially, he just didn't want to take responsibility and didn't want to marry her, obviously, so he just dumped Steve off. There is no history known about Steve's dad. His mother is in her 80s now, so that kind of tells you why she didn't necessarily remember a ton about Steve's story right away. Has been married to someone else and has 2 daughters. Steve says that he has lived a good life despite a maybe rocky beginning. He was in the Peace Corps, traveled a ton, and married his wife of 22 years, Maria. He has 2 kids and recently retired from being a chiropractor. Steve will be meeting his birth mother for the first time later this month. It's interesting. It's not like earth-shattering or anything like that, Steve said. My true parents, of course, were my adoptive parents. It would be almost impossible for me to think otherwise. I like this story because he doesn't have any ill will towards his biological mom, he still sees his adoptive parents as his real parents, which I think is incredible considering that they took him in as a baby, and that he has no, ill will towards anybody, and that he did in fact live a very happy life despite, being dropped off in a phone booth. I don't know, I thought this case was interesting, but I really loved the happy ending, and I thought that maybe we could all use a happier type of true crime story. It still is sad nonetheless, but at least it has a happy ending, and everybody involved turned out okay. I am curious what happened to Steve's father, though. Either way, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I hope that you decide to subscribe to my YouTube channel. If not, thank you for joining me for this video, and for those of you that will be back, I will be back with another true crime career video. All right, have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye, guys.